La primera sesión del día de hoy, una plenaria, está dedicada a la compleja temática del liderazgo para la excelencia. Sin embargo, tenemos con nosotros 3 líderes dedicados a la búsqueda de la excelencia. Para ello, tenemos hoy un modelo tipo panel en el cual ellos interactuarán y tendremos la oportunidad entonces, además de enriquecernos de los aprendizajes compartidos. El doctor Sidney Klajner es hoy en día presidente del Hospital Israelita Albert Einstein. Es médico de la Universidad de Sao Paulo con una residencia en cirugía general y cirugía del tracto digestivo evidentemente, también de la Universidad de Sao Paulo. Tiene un máster en cirugía de la misma institución y es fellow del College Americano de Cirugía. Muy bienvenido, Sidney. Estamos muy contentos de tenerte aquí. El doctor Adolfo Llinás, director médico de la Fundación Santa Fe de Bogotá, es especialista en cirugía y traumatología de la Universidad Javeriana. Actualmente se desempeña como director médico de la Fundación Santa Fe de Bogotá y es miembro institucional del Departamento de Ortopedia y de Cirugía Reconstructiva de Cadera. Es también el coordinador del grupo de manejo de hemofilia de esa institución y profesor titular de la Universidad de los Andes. El doctor Muelley está hoy acompañándonos desde Darmouth Institute, donde es el director del Instituto de Salud Global. You okay? Wonderful.
Working? No.
Además, él está dedicado a forjar alianzas en países como el nuestro y me acaba de contar, interrumpo la presentación formal, de su profunda convicción y su compromiso con todos nosotros para entregarnos, no solo como viene haciendo, sino de aquí en adelante, su conocimiento de lo que no funciona y darnos aquellos aprendizajes de las oportunidades que él ve que realmente están frente a nosotros. El doctor Muelley es médico graduado de la Universidad de Harvard y adicionalmente tiene una maestría en política pública, también de esa misma universidad, la escuela John F. Kennedy. Muy bienvenidos a los 3.
Thank you, Teresa, for the presentation. And good morning, everyone. Let's try to wake up a little bit. And I have the honor, and I thank you, the organization, for inviting us to show the Albert Einstein model of what we call the leadership in our hospital in terms of the governance, the corporate governance, and also the clinical governance. And I used to, as an example, our efforts in terms of safety and our pursuing high reliability organization status. So Albert Einstein, just to remember, has the strategic plan proposed to deliver healthcare to every citizen of São Paulo, every citizen of our country, as a way to impact the healthcare and the health of our citizens. And we are basically, we have 3 fundamental pillars. The one in terms of assistance as an integrated cycle of care. The second in terms of education and how we prepare our health professionals to the future, our medical school, our courses. And the third one in terms of research and innovation, what means the scientific research and also innovation in terms of technology. All the three pillars supported by one very, very important for us, the social responsibility, and what made Albert Einstein to reach this condition nowadays, the 4 Jewish precepts that we call mitzvah, good deeds, refuah, health, chinuch, education, tzedakah, social justice, that was in 2011 confirmed by a diagnosis in terms of organizational culture as very important to every collaborator, the 14,000 collaborators from our institution, in terms of disseminating these precepts and to achieve the reputation and the system that we have nowadays. Through the history, we had 5 phases in our hospital. The first one, when the hospital was founded in 1955 by a group of visionary physicians, led by Manuel Tabaco Hidalgo, that saw in a hospital a way to retribute the reception that the Jewish community, the Jewish immigration had at that time after the Second War. We call the visionary phase, and the purpose of the hospital at that time is just to serve well, the best technicians to serve well. After that, we had the technology phase, the acquisition of technology in terms of turn the hospital as the best place in our country with all technologies available in the world by Dr. Joseph Fair. After that was the first steps of Albert Einstein in terms of acquire certifications, how to measure our quality program, and in 1999 we had the first Joint Commission certification outside US since the efforts of Reinaldo Brandt was the president at that time. My antecessor, Dr. Claudio Lautenberg, had the mission to make Albert Einstein not only inside our walls, but outside, making partnership with other countries, other institutions, and very, very big investments in terms of education and programs with the government, with the PROADI is our way to relation with the government, which made us capable to assist more than 1 million people in our regions in the public sector. And I received the legacy to go from these steps further, and mostly what we are investing in terms of sustainability, innovation, in terms of patient engagement, digital transformation, and most of all, engagement of the staff, of patients, how to achieve in a way of digital transformation, not to lose the humanism that we reach all over the history. In 2013, we adopted the triple aim policy from IHI, and all our initiatives are done by the AAA. And as the example of high reliability organization, we have the leadership and the safety and the patient experience circle the high reliability organization and the role of every collaborator in terms of our institution. So this is a chart of how to engage patients and family around a system with most of the in a safe environment. Our way to define that Claudia La Selva was transmitted yesterday in another room here, our patient experience accelerator program, how we define in this cloud of words our 5 elements, the quality, safety, outcome, cost, and service, and our acrostic SPA, S as safety, P as passion to serve, and A, attention to details that is driven our program. So, talking about governance we divide in corporate governance and clinical governance. In corporate governance, we have a little bit different model of governance. We have the board of directors that is responsible for the strategic plan, but also a second collegiate that we call the board of counseling that represent the council of the hospital that elects the board of director. but also work together in a check and balance system that prevent us to make something not well aligned between all the counselors, all directors, but also works as a way to audit the strategic plan that is performed by our board and by our executive directory that is led by Ricky Neves, our manager, our general director that is here also, and will speak just after me. And this model, we are supported by committees, strategic committees, that are all the directors and counseling directors are invited to be part of the committees, and they propose the strategic way to be approved by the directory. All this governance model, we have yearly evaluation to make things better in terms of governance, as a 360-degree assessment every year to assess what we can improve in terms of governance, in terms of agility, in terms of how to make our decisions most to the end, to the staff. So this leads us in our environment to receive a ranking, a first-degree ranking in a kind of concourse with a very big newspaper in Brazil, that we achieved the first prize of governance model among 1,500 institutions, not only healthcare institutions. So we were very proud. This was in 2017. So how to engage the corporate governance and its commitment to people safety, and what will ensure the status of high reliability. So this is important to give support for the clinical governance. And the clinical governance is a system through which organizations are accountable for continuously improving the quality of their services and safeguarding high standards of care by creating an environment in which excellence in clinical care will flourish. This is our model, how I will use the safety culture as an example, and how the clinical governance can lead as this example. So I will show some initiatives of our hospital, our system. For example, the risk mapping that we perform every time, the surgical sites mapping process, and here is an example. Sorry. This is an example of how we bring together the medical students in these pictures to have the connection with the culture of safety since the beginning, since they are formed by the medical school, the triades and safety hurdles every day in our hospital, and how this could lead to emergency codes and rapid response teams. And every time there is an opportunity to improve and to make some barriers in terms of safety care in our hospital. The clinical governance also, we have an important program how to engage physicians and how to elevate the relationship between the hospitals and a system with more than 9,000 physicians that are in our base, and autonomous physicians, and we have a challenge to engage all of them in terms of safety, in terms of quality and process and initiatives. So we have a segmentation of these physicians, and we have a very, very big program we call GMA, the medical groups, assistential medical groups, that we put together physicians from all specialties to discuss with healthcare professionals of our system around a condition, around the disease. For example, we have the GMA of metabolic syndrome, we have the GMA of perinatology, put together pediatricians, nurses, obstetricians to discuss, and this is nowadays the best model that we have, how to create lines of services, how we can engage in terms of strategic initiatives in our hospital. And we had the opportunity to publish this experience in the Harvard Business Review of Brazil. And we have now 31 groups with more than 1,000 physicians that are inside, and more than 500 multi-professional team workers that every month discuss and keep discussing in virtually options that we have in our system. The medical staff, they are invited to participate in other initiatives like the innovation initiatives, the circuit of startups, and the hackathon that we made every semester with the medical students of our medical school, and also with the an engineering school of São Paulo, a very important one, that we put students together to create something very impactful to our public sector. And I know that Maureen liked Paraisópolis that time, and they create also some apps that we are very proud to hear that these students create an app, an application to smartphones, how to mothers that cannot work because of their children can be together to elect one mother that that can stay at home to take care of other children so that the other mothers can go to work. So they were created. It was marvelous for us. We were very proud of that. We have also the clinical governance in terms of what we can do in other initiatives, how to influence, like the Merck Sharp done for mothers, that we could lower the mortality, the maternal mortality in the northeast of the country. The Parto Adequado project, I think it's well known in our environment, and how the collaborative, the improving safety in scale in Brazil with the help of IHI, we could bring 5 organizations together, and we spread safety culture and capacitation to health professionals all over the country. Also, the Advisory Council, we will have, I think tomorrow, to be shown here, the experience of the program of safety of Julia Lima, and how we create in this clinical governance the council, the Patient Safety Council of Julia Lima, and how it could help to implement the code age, the hemorrhagic code, that could bring the mortality or the catastrophic or the severe adverse event in terms of hemorrhagic syndrome almost to 0 in this year, just implementing a condition that every place in the hospital that are related to treat someone with hemorrhagic syndrome are in alert when this code is pushed, this button is pushed. Also, the employee safety is very important to impact, and how the employee safety is very important for the safety culture of our system. And this is our worries about accidents, about biologic accidents, and occupational loss of time incidents. The clinical governance is responsible, so the adverse events, and in this chart we can see how we could, in absolute numbers, lower the number of severe adverse events. So, in these models of corporate governance, giving the support for the clinical governance, the effective clinical governance contributes to building the safety culture and reducing threats and losses to the operation, the financial and the image of the organization. The results of clinical governance express the excellence in corporate governance. So both working together, how the leadership can impact the clinical governance is very, very important to transmit at the end of the staff who deal with the patients and our clients about our culture, about our safety. Every kind of initiative must come from the leadership and must be spread with a lot of commitment. So excellence is a status in constant evolution which depends on the leadership able to influence and mobilize people to transform systems with passion, strategy, vision, and preservation of values. That's a phrase that I could put in an interview that I had 2 years ago, and I think it represents what Albert Einstein is doing in terms of governance, in terms of leadership. Thank you very much.
¿Me puede ayudar montando la segunda presentación, por favor? Muchas gracias. Un privilegio compartir el podio con estas dos personas que han influenciado o han influido tanto nuestra región y el mundo. Dado que este es un evento que trae a nuestra región la potencia de diferentes instituciones, y una de ellas es HIAE, es el IGI, en este desafío de resumir nuestra estrategia desde el punto de vista del liderazgo en 10 minutos, he tomado la libertad de hacer un ejercicio de anatomía comparada. Siendo ortopedista, pues todo tiene que funcionar desde este punto de vista. Y lo que he hecho, utilizando una publicación del IGI, donde Morín Bisoñano estructuró 7 componentes de liderazgo que actúan entre ellos y utilizan la analogía de las palancas, otro concepto absolutamente musculoesquelético, y un ejercicio regional impresionante donde Pedro Delgado, de la mano del doctor Aguirre del Pablo y de Henry Gallardo de la Fundación, lo contextualizaron al ambiente latinoamericano. Lo que he hecho es traer un ejemplo de lo que nosotros hacemos en cada una de esas 7 palancas para esencialmente resumir nuestro abordaje frente al liderazgo. La primera de las palancas dice que uno debe establecer y supervisar los objetivos sistémicos específicos desde el nivel más alto del gobierno de la organización. En el pequeño cuadro he resumido lo que es un documento extenso en una frase o una expresión que pienso que captura el espíritu de lo que querían los autores transmitir. De manera que en el cuadro dice establecer indicadores sólidos de desempeño sistémico. Esas 25 cajitas que están abajo en la diapositiva representan indicadores compuestos de desempeño, y algunos tienen la capacidad de resumir en un número todo nuestro esfuerzo. Un buen ejemplo de esto son publicaciones. Nuestro indicador mide publicaciones arbitradas, referenciables o localizables en el International Scientific Index, punto final. Presentamos un póster maravilloso, encantado de conocerlo, no nos sirve. Escribimos un artículo en una revista de vanidades, felicitaciones, no nos sirve. Publicamos un artículo en una revista colombiana buenísima que no está indexada, qué buen ejercicio, me avisa cuando crezca. Esencialmente, solamente cuenta en ese indicador esa dimensión. Cuando Marcia nos mandó su hoja de vida, la resumió en el factor de impacto personal expresado como el índice de Hirsch, el índice H. Y con ese número la podemos calibrar 100%. Ese es un indicador que resume en un número todo el esfuerzo de influir que está en la enunciación de nuestra misión. ¿Cómo influimos? Compartiendo el conocimiento científico. ¿Dónde se comparte el conocimiento científico? Donde produce impacto. ¿Qué se llama escribir donde no produce impacto? Desperdicio. De manera que los indicadores buscan tener ese nivel de contundencia, y el liderazgo entiende a fondo qué significa factor de impacto y por lo tanto alinean detrás de ese factor de impacto una cantidad de recursos. En el cuadro de la derecha hay un ejemplo de indicadores de un documento también del IGI donde expresan, por ejemplo, la mortalidad esperada global del hospital normalizada contra su complejidad. Un número que le indica a uno si no está por encima o por debajo de la media en mortalidad, y es un ejercicio de enorme utilidad. La segunda palanca dice que uno debe desarrollar una estrategia ejecutable para lograr objetivos sistémicos y vigilar su implementación desde los niveles más altos del gobierno de la organización. Nadie vigila mejor que talento humano, son vigilantes natos, nacen para realmente vigilar y uno siempre les está debiendo cosas. De manera que talento humano vigila la alineación de este direccionamiento con las metas en forma de cascada hasta los niveles más profundos de la organización. ¿Cuántos peldaños tiene la cascada? En mi opinión, es una variable subalterna de qué tanta alineación tiene uno y qué tanta potencia va a tener para aquello en lo que invierte. Este es un objetivo de mi evaluación de desempeño. A la izquierda y a la derecha, los objetivos desplegados en detalle. Y todas las personas que dependen de la dirección médica deben tener unos objetivos desplegados hacia la profundidad de la organización. La tercera palanca hace referencia a canalizar la atención de los directivos hacia el mejoramiento sistémico. Y puede ser por medio de liderazgo personal, por sistemas de liderazgo y por sistemas de transparencia, una palabra que ha sido utilizada en múltiples sesiones de esta experiencia. Este triángulo indica la correlación que hay entre la estrategia arriba, la cultura abajo y el modelo de atención en salud. En nuestro modelo original decía procesos en vez de modelo de atención en salud. Y yo creo que si uno no da el salto a escoger y comprometerse con un modelo, el cual implica renuncias, escogencias, foco, realmente no puede dar el salto hacia un liderazgo integral. Es muy poco probable que uno tenga liderazgo sin foco. Y la parte más dura de este ejercicio, la parte más fascinante de este ejercicio, el mayor desafío es que toda estructura debe seguir a la estrategia. Y la mayoría de nosotros crecimos en sistemas dominados por el índice del libro de Harrison de Medicina Interna, donde había una estrategia y pretendíamos poner la estructura detrás de los capítulos de este libro. Hay que dar la vuelta y pasar a este paradigma donde la estructura en realidad sigue a la estrategia y no lo contrario. La cuarta palanca es fácilmente resumible en la inclusión de pacientes y familias en el equipo de mejoramiento. Y la razón de por qué esto es importante, y Plenaria es una organización que ha estado presente en este escenario en foros anteriores, está presente en Colombia, está presente en la OES, está presente en el Albert Einstein, donde han tenido acreditación por ellos desde hace muchísimo tiempo. Es una organización que lleva a nivel de estándares la humanización del servicio, donde los pacientes están en el centro. Y la razón por la cual esto es tan importante es porque si un equipo directivo, en efecto, tiene liderazgo efectivo, los pacientes se lo van a decir y serán muy claros de ser críticos cuando esto se encuentre ausente. De manera que de alguna manera la organización masivamente debe conectar el liderazgo más alto con la voz de los pacientes en la trinchera. La quinta palanca hace relación a lo financiero, hacer que el director financiero o de la administración, y yo soy enfático, el director financiero se convierta en un adalid de la calidad. Y el trabajo del director financiero, que debe tener el corazón tan grande como las sábanas de Excel que utilizan. Y aquí está Alejandro Escobar, que es un exponente anatómico de esa característica que acabo de mencionar, con quien tuve el enorme privilegio de estar en un podio parecido a estos, acá en el foro de la OES, hablando de esta presentación. Se llamaba nuestra presentación Reconciliando idiomas clínicos y financieros potenciando valor. Y abrió una conversación con él que no se va a acabar nunca, sobre cómo juntos, este es un ejemplo, es una conversación abierta con todos los líderes de la organización, y con la trinchera, y con los pacientes, y con su propio corazón, y con el entorno, y con la OES, donde además sirve como miembro de la junta directiva, construye un modelo que está ilustrado a la derecha, donde la filantropía está metida dentro de la ecuación financiera, y la ecuación financiera carece de sentido si no tiene foco filantrópico, y la filantropía también requiere foco y también requiere renuncias. La sexta palanca es la de comprometer a los médicos, y este es un tema sobre el cual en foros como este hay con frecuencia comentarios y heridas de batalla y una serie de lamentos y melancolía. Realmente yo no creo que comprometer a los médicos sea difícil siempre y cuando el mensaje sea claro y la alineación sea cristalina. Pero ¿por qué mencionar aisladamente a los médicos? Y Sidney lo mencionó hace un rato en su presentación, porque típicamente el modelo de relacionamiento de la organización con los médicos es diferente al modelo del relacionamiento con muchos de los otros profesionales. Y ese modelo implica una conversación de aliados, de socios, a quienes se persuade. Y en mi opinión, en el modelo nuestro, donde eso es cierto, es el laboratorio de aprendizaje para que ese lenguaje no sea selectivo para los médicos, porque ese es el lenguaje que tiene que utilizar uno con las personas que están empleados. El hecho de que estén empleados no quiere decir que estén persuadidos. Y si uno tiene una persona empleada o no, tiene que ver con las normas de cada país de talento humano. Pero el lenguaje de la persuasión debe ser universal. No importa que uno pueda prescindir de ese empleado en un momento dado. Uno debe guardar eso en un cajón y tratarlo como un aliado, de manera que realmente construya de manera apasionada, como Sidney lo mencionó, lo anterior. Estas líneas que se cruzan, lo que muestran esencialmente es el número de médicos que han decidido pasar la totalidad de su tiempo dentro de nuestra organización. Y ha sido producto de un lenguaje persuasivo, porque tienen la opción de no hacerlo. Pero es muy poco probable que logremos un alto desempeño si los médicos pasan parte del tiempo en la organización, porque el nivel de desempeño que estamos persiguiendo es un compromiso de vida y media entera y no de tiempo parcial. Y la séptima y última palanca, Pedro, es la de desarrollar capacidad y destrezas técnicas en mejoramiento de la calidad. Y en mi opinión, la destreza técnica más relevante de todas, la que lo resume todo, es cuando uno logra liderazgo colectivo. Sandra Soler, que lidera nuestros centros de cuidado clínico, que dependen 100% del liderazgo colectivo, les dirá, y está aquí presente para hablarlo, cómo es imposible progresar en estas escalas a menos que uno dé ese paso. Tenemos grupos donde hay liderazgo individual, son sobresalientes individualmente, pero son realmente frágiles en lo colectivo. Y estas barras verdes esencialmente reflejan nuestro aprendizaje no en cómo operar mejor o cómo tratar mejor pacientes con diabetes o en cómo hacer mejores trasplantes hepáticos, sino en cómo hacer liderazgo colectivo, es lo que realmente le permite uno avanzar. Espero, Maureen, haber hecho honor a esta publicación maravillosa que pongo a consideración de todos, está de acceso abierto, en este ejercicio irreverente de anatomía comparada. Muchas gracias.
While the slides are coming up, let me just say what a privilege it is for me to be here today. This is my second time in Colombia. I visited Fundación de Santa Fe de Bogotá 13 months ago and looked forward to an opportunity to come back and join those colleagues and make some new colleagues here in Colombia. What I'm here to talk about is leadership for excellence in achieving higher quality decisions across a healthcare system. I really do think that a focus on the quality of decisions as opposed to the quality in which we deliver services is critical for healthcare systems everywhere to become sustainable. You cannot judge the quality of a decision made in the face of uncertainty by its outcome. Just think about that for a minute. It's so obvious when you think about it, and yet we don't think about it often enough in healthcare. And no one can make and implement a good decision alone. It's just not possible. Particularly in healthcare. So what I'm going to focus on is measuring and improving the quality of decisions and the teamwork needed to make them. And this teamwork extends from the front lines right up to the highest levels of governance and beyond. It extends right up to the Minister of Health and those who lead the government. If you don't create a sense of mutual accountability for everybody in those roles, and give them each the measures and the tools to hold themselves accountable to each other, we will never achieve shared decision-making, patient engagement, sustainable healthcare. I say that based on some 40 years of trying to make shared decision-making happen. So I can say that both with some pride and a lot of humility because we've failed at bringing it to scale anywhere. I had the privilege of learning about decision theory from economists and then being chief of general medicine at Massachusetts General Hospital for 30 years. People know that kind of hospital for its high science and its high technology, but they're less aware of the fact that it really pays attention to people and the soft stuff. It was the first hospital to establish a social service department in the United States in 1905. 60 years later, it made an intentional decision not to compete to do the first heart transplant. And instead, when the first heart transplant was done in 1967, they opened a community health center in one of the poorest communities of Boston, and 3 years later, opened another in the poor community that I grew up in, adjacent to Boston. That's leadership, and it's setting a direction. So I was formed by that kind of leadership. But it needs to be taken to this level of mutual accountability to be successful. Now, I'm going to apologize for how complex this slide is and how unreadable it is from any seat in the House, but I make no apology for digging deep into the complexity of leadership in a complex adaptive system. The horizontal axis goes from the front lines of care to the highest level of systems leadership. The vertical axis uses the number of interdependencies as a proxy for the complexity of the system. Down at the origin is the fundamental interdependency between a clinical team and a patient and family for decision quality. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But as you go from a clinical team and a patient and family, or a single clinician and a patient, to include others, other clinicians, but people in social care, people in mental health, the interdependencies become logarithmically greater within the system. And as you move up through middle managers and to senior managers and to governance, it becomes all the more complex. So over-specifying what people should do in these roles is not going to work. You need the simple rules. And the simple rules I advocate for are, our job is to give people the care they need and want, no less but no more. Need and want, no less but no more. The boundary is no decisions at the front lines made in the face of easily avoidable ignorance. Why? Because if there's easily avoidable ignorance documented and not addressed at the front lines, it permeates the system. How can any decision be informed? Workforce planning, capacity investments, all uninformed. At the end, I'm going to close with this slide, and my hope is that in the few minutes I have, I'll just give you a taste of what some of the measures and tools are for people at each of these levels to hold themselves accountable for creating a sustainable health and care system. Yesterday, I talked a little bit about this monograph that I wrote with colleagues for the National Health Service when they were implementing their strategy. It's called Patient Preferences Matter, Stop the Silent Misdiagnosis. We don't use the term shared decision-making once, even though my task was to join up practice variation, shared decision-making, and commissioning, or what we pay for at the public. Instead, we called it preference diagnosis. And we started with a story about two women, one who was 58 years old, who was diagnosed with breast cancer, dreaded that diagnosis, dreaded the treatment. She was just beginning to recover physically, but not yet emotionally. She got a telephone call from the hospital. Sorry, Susan, you never had breast cancer after all. There was a mistake in the pathology lab. We turned to another patient, 80 years old, lots of other conditions. She knows she's not going to live forever. She, too, hated the diagnosis and hated the surgery and was just beginning to recover physically but not emotionally, and decided she needed to talk to a friend who she hadn't consulted beforehand because she was just so rushed in the decision-making. Over tea, she learned that her friend had breast cancer 3 years ago, like her, and knew she wasn't going to live forever, and she chose to take hormone therapy to slow the cancer down until she could die of something else. That woman, Linda, knew she would have done the same thing, but she didn't have the option. Disease misdiagnosis, preference misdiagnosis. The surgery was equally challenging, scalpels equally sharp. Down below, you see two men Those aren't Linda and Susan. Those are women. If you engage women and find out what they're concerned about and make a ranked list of their concerns, 120 women, and then you ask the doctors which of these 12 concerns are most pressing, which 3 of the 12, 71% of the doctors say living without a breast. For the women, 7%. Easily avoidable ignorance. And I could give you many more examples, but I don't have time. This is just a figure to give you a sense of how we learn from variation. We learn from variations in outcomes and costs by making visible the underlying processes. That's largely what quality improvement is about. But we learn from variation in per capita rates of intervention by making visible the underlying preferences and making sure they're the patients. Again, I don't have time to talk about these feedback loops, but if we don't recognize that we have the most to learn at the front lines about what patients need and want, if senior leaders in your organizations or in the government don't recognize that, we're never going to learn it. So let's come up with some simple tools. A tool like Collaborate. 3 questions. How much effort was made to help you understand your health issues? How much effort was made to listen carefully to learn what matters to you? How much effort was made to consider what matters to you? And see how people perform with that. Give the clinicians that tool to hold themselves accountable for engagement. Now, we've just talked about this kind of shared decision-making, but we all know that social determinants play an incredible role. In this particular figure, all of healthcare contributes to 11% of health and well-being over the life course, compared to 27% for social determinants and 38% for individual behavior. If we think about shared decision-making in that context, we have the opportunity to stop substituting high-cost, high-risk acute care services that fail to meet needs that would be better met by low-cost, low-risk services in the community if we just create the channels to move upstream a bit. Just a quick word about teamwork. The horizontal axis here is level of training. So somebody with an MD after their name might sit at the right end of that horizontal axis. The vertical axis is complexity of the task. The diagonal is pretty interesting because everything below it is potentially inefficient. Everything above it is potentially ineffective. It looks like a tightrope, and that's uncomfortable because it makes it seem like you might be on an assembly line doing everything in a Taylorist way. But if you measure teamwork, and if you focus on the relational aspects of teamwork, as Jodi Cattell does, is there shared goals, shared knowledge, mutual respect, communication that's frequent, timely, problem solving, it's more like a boulevard than a tightrope. Everybody is working at their highest and best use. One quick example of that, this is a patient measure that's just 4 items. It's very similar to Collaborate. But one example of this kind of teamwork is the way we totally redesigned primary care. The book on the left is my textbook, which is 1,600 pages. I've been editing it since the mid-1970s. I can speak with a little bit of authority about primary care. And 90% of it is the bidirectional exchange of information, but we haven't designed it that way. What we did when we opened this practice with Iora Health, we were their first clinical partner, is we reduced the number of doctors per capita by 50%. And for every doctor we didn't hire, we hired 5 coaches who may or may not have had any experience in healthcare. They were compassionate, they were empathetic, they were smart. They just didn't have the opportunities that most of us in the room have had. They had common lived experience with the people that they were coaching. And motivational interviewing and shared decision-making can easily be taught to those kind of people. And taking the approach I just took, you triple the amount of time you have to engage patients. Now, a lot of this work has been tested. I was at Harvard for 40 years, 35 of those years at Mass General. I chose to go to Dartmouth 8 years ago to figure out the how rather than the what we should be doing. And I wanted to understand what was very context-specific by country, by community, by culture, and what was more universal, what was important everywhere. And here's a list of things that we think are important everywhere, and we've tested this with the National Health Service. There are 8 essential capabilities to do what we're talking about. One is to develop a logic for learning and set your learning priorities. If you bring people together to do that with different perspectives, they inevitably realize that they don't have the most to learn at meetings like this, They have the most to learn from the people they serve about what they need and want. Once you've developed that logic and learning priorities, you can then learn from variation in outcomes and costs and in per capita rates. And the latter needs much more attention because that's the focus on decision quality. Are decisions concordant with what matters most to the people we serve? That's one pair of capabilities. The next pair of capabilities is deliver what is valued. Again, if you measure decision quality, you know whether or not you're doing that. If you don't, you don't. Measure what matters. Deliver with teams. Organize not just for improvement, forgive me, organize for innovation. And you have to organize differently for innovation transformation than you do for incremental improvement. Lead for accountability, mutual accountability, and govern for sustainability. What you see below are a whole set of tools, that some of which were on that first slide that I'm going to turn to now. And the notion is you engage people in training that gets them to raise their hand and said, yes, I want to score high on collaborate. I want to score high on integrate when I'm working with others. And you go all the way up to the top of the government and you say, yes, I want to have realistic expectations about what I'm going to invest in and what I should be investing in to build capacity and when the return on that investment will come and how I measure it. So you've got, at the front lines, people willing to say, I will be accountable for becoming the learning front end of the entire healthcare system by measuring decision quality and achieving decision quality with excellent teamwork. But that's not going to happen unless you have that, over on the right-hand side, that arrow pointing up, leaders who recognize that they can't make good decisions unless they have that learning front end. We've come to use a Martin Luther King expression. He said this about 10 days before he was assassinated. And it works because what he was talking about was so much about power and the need to transfer it, so much about hierarchies. What he said was, the irony is, I cannot be what I ought to be unless you are what you ought to be. And you cannot be what you ought to be unless I am what I ought to be. And that, I think, is the challenge for leaders to understand, and learned a great deal in the UK to suggest that a great deal of progress could be made and needs to be made, and we can all do it together. Thank you.
De manera especial, les doy las gracias. No tenemos en este momento, desafortunadamente, tiempo para que el público les haga preguntas, pero los invito a todos a que los persigan y los acosen y les pregunten todas esas cosas de estas ideas que en este momento nos atacan y flotan en nuestra cabeza. A los tres, mil y mil gracias por mostrarnos qué es liderazgo, sin el cual no lo vamos a conseguir. Mil y mil gracias.